the Biden administration just puts out basically a press statement from Secretary Blinken saying, we're going to resume aid to the Palestinians. We're going to comply with all the existing U.S. law. And they basically lay out how they think, and I don't think I'm putting words in their mouth. It's how they think they're working around the Taylor-Force Act, which prohibits funding to the Palestinian Authority.
The Taylor-Force Act, which requires that the State Department certify that the Palestinian Authority has terminated its pay-to-slay policy and its support for terror. Neither of those things are true.
We are actually, in an indirect way, but in a very real way, we will continue to help pay for that program.
Their workaround here is that they're not directly giving the funds to the government. First, they're giving it to another agency who then ends up giving it to the government.
If there is now a circumvention of that by just saying, well, we'll give it to USAID and they'll give it to this group and then it'll get there, well, then they'll never certify changes. I mean, it defeats the entire purpose of bipartisan legislation.
I really strongly suspect this is the Planned Parenthood strategy where you give dollars for a prohibited use by sending it through a permitted account.
There is money going to the education programs, and the curriculums in these schools still teach about it's very graphic.
There is no stipulation with these funds that they change their curriculum, Jay, and that curriculum still calls for the hatred of Jews and for the destruction of Israel.
Someone's got to ask Secretary Blinken, well, do you believe, as the Taylor-Force Act requires, that would you certify right now the Palestinian government's terminated payments for acts of terrorism, pay for slay, and is taking credible steps to end acts of violence against Israeli and U.S. citizens? I mean, I don't think he would want to certify that right now. He wouldn't.
There is no desire on behalf of the Palestinian Authority to do away with this pay to slay program. They still fund it. They've been funding it while we cut their funding out. They still funded it.
President Trump withdrew $300 million worth of aid to the Palestinians unless they would renounce it. They immediately issued a statement the next day, and they were very clear. We will not stop this program, and they basically told us that we could keep our money.
If you know that the money is going to end up in the Palestinian Authority's hands, or some of it will, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, then you know that you're violating the law. You are intentionally violating the law.
It will be very difficult, I think, to certify that funds going to the Palestinian Authority aren't going to end up in the hands of bad actors in violation of the Taylor-Force Act. More than illegal, it's immoral to underwrite what the Palestinian Authority is doing to support a regime that continues to pay people to commit these heinous acts all across the Middle East.
If they believed what they believed, which was that these workarounds were available because you could go through other agencies, I don't know why they had to make such a big deal about this. Why do they feel like they need to start defending it immediately?
If this complied with U.S. law, they wouldn't have made any statement about it at all. But look, saying that the funding is consistent with U.S. law does not make it so.
This is Ned Price again, State Department spokesperson. He kept getting pressed on the Taylor-Force Act.
You asked about this fairly technical issue as to how we ensure that this aid is consistent with the Taylor-Force Act.
Well,
and
and
that it doesn't directly.
But I would not say that that's fairly technical.
No. Well, I'm getting to a technical point.
You're either breaking the law or you're following the law.
Well, you're right. It is very clear. We are following the law. Everything we are doing here is quite consistent with it, scrupulously so.
Take the names off of the nations or the states or the people involved, and just imagine that U.S. taxpayers are funding an entity or a government that has a program that pays hundreds of millions of dollars to slaughter Israeli citizens and American citizens. Jordan, no matter what the U.S. law said, I think the U.S. law is on our side here, but even if it wasn't, why in the world would you want to fund that entity?
The United States it issues an announcement, Harry. It says it's pleased to announce that working with Congress, really? Working with Congress, we plan to restart U.S. economic development and humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people. No certification from the Secretary of State of Compliance.
According to the Washington Free Beacon, they've told Congress behind the scenes that they know the Palestinians aren't in compliance. And either way, Jordan, they haven't certified it.
Right.
Why would you do this?
I think it's just this is part of their agenda. They want to go back to the Iranian nuclear deal. They want to start, again, sipping tea with the UN members. And to sip tea with the UN members, you got to fund the Palestinians and their terror, or else you don't get to go to the Tea Party.